Morning guys, Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training. I've reduced my amount of public offerings with my videos. I'm still doing a lot of videos, but they're mainly going to the customers and going to people that are private instead of putting them out public. But I thought this was an important subject to go ahead and cover, and since I'm driving into Hollywood and a lot of time on the road, I figured I'd take that time to do a little yak session. So if those of you that have been watching my videos for any length of time have learned anything, you've learned that I'm always talking about the dog being a very emotional creature and being tied into the emotional side of the dog when you're working them. And every now and then we will get behavioral issues that are very much tied into the emotions of the dog that are created by the owner. And lately I have taken the tack that I am going to stop doing aggression cases, etc. in a general sense. There's times that I take the accounts and I'll handle things, but for the most part I've just become very jaded and very angry and upset at society as a whole that we have dogs that are very stout, like Presa Canarios and Cane Corsos and Dogo Argentinas, and dogs that are very stout that people get when they're puppies, and that they're oh so cute and what a little thing, and then they don't have a clue what they're getting into, and they don't do the right things in molding, shaping that clay, and giving that dog every chance to succeed that they can, because they just think the dog's a little cute puppy. And that cute little puppy turns into a monster as he gets older, with human nature being what it is, and our lifestyles taking precedent over the dog, and not being totally responsible in that regards, to where you're just leaving the dog in the backyard, letting the dog ramp up, running the fence line, not giving the dog everything he needs to be turn out to be a very well-developed and balanced animal, and that these behaviors end up causing a problem when a dog grows into themselves hormonally and otherwise, to end up having major behavioral problems that are very hard to reverse, and that end up only being trauma on the dog when you end up handing me the keys and saying, can you fix it, at 12 months, 16, 18 months of age, right? And the pressure that we've got to put that dog through and what we've got to do to balance that dog is pretty dramatic. Can we do it? If you know what you're doing, you can, right? You can balance that animal. But here's the problem. Think of the brain as a computer, and those pathways are being written to when that dog is young based on your behavior patterns and what you do with that animal as an owner. And when you don't put the time and energy into taking that clay when it's malleable, when it's able to be molded, shaped, and formed when that dog's young, and you don't put the work in, you end up causing problems to the degree that now that dog has to go through a lot of trauma to get through it. And I'll give you a couple examples of cases that I've had just recently, okay? And these are perfect examples. They're extreme cases by virtue of what we've got to do to overcome the problem, okay? So the first dog was a bulldog. Came, the count was about a month or so ago, and I'm just now starting to work with a client in regards to these behaviors that the dog had when he came to me in kennel. And it took a lot of work to get that dog balanced and to get that dog through this, and doing it in an in-kennel way, so that we ended up taking the dog out of their environment and just flipping it on its head and giving the dog a whole new pattern and structure, and it's a lot of work. It took me an awful lot to get to a point where now that dog was bonded with me, and now we have that dog balanced, and now I'm able to start making headway in overcoming that dog's behavioral situations. And the bulldog was very aggressive and wanted to eat me, had human aggression, right? And it took an awful lot for me to get through that. Why is that? Well, one, it was because of what was created from that environment the owner gave him, but also remember what I've told you 1,000 times. The dog is a product of genetics and a product of his environment that is the overall cause of a lot of these behavioral problems. So the bulldog has been bred to have a very high degree of tenacity, to stay in the fight. They're what's called a bull baiting dog. They will go out and handle the bulls and grab them by the snout and hang on, and they will accept that fight and they will not let it go. Okay, that is in their genetic makeup, in their nature. And without that proper development, when that dog's a puppy and you let that dog go, then you try to reverse that. The pathways that have been written into the brain, those emotional triggers that are there, are very hard to reverse, because the way it works, and this is what I try to educate and try to teach my customers, is that behavior is like a magnet. It wants to draw back to those same pathways that have already been written to the computer, right? And you can do all the work you want to with me, and I can make headway with that dog because the dog has a totally different structure, everything, and I know what I'm doing in regards to animal psychology, and I can get those pathways to be rewritten, but the old ones are still there. And as soon as the owner showed back up with his bulldog, I was really happy about the progress that I had made and what I was doing with the animal and the relationship and the balance that I had brought to that dog's mental stability. Very happy with what I had done. Very proud of myself. It was a lot of work. Then the owner showed back up for the go-home meeting. And right away, that dog just flashed on all, and it went right back to those old pathways that have been written into that dog's mental psyche. And it was like I hadn't even done any of the work. And it was just, I saw it and I went, oh my God, and it wasn't a good thing. So all I could do is do my go home, explain it to the customers, and put the load on the customer, because in the end, even though we have that to go to, I've got a foundation now to be able to use, and this dog has some new pathways that have been written, new behaviors that have been written. Everything is there for the customer to use. Now they don't have the skill and or the knowledge and timing and in proper balance of pattern and routine that we're going to use to get this dog to go towards the rewriting of those pathways. So now here's where it takes the owner getting involved and being very determined to what we call drive-through, meaning we have to drive through and make it such a consistent pattern of new life when that dog goes back home, because that's what I did when the dog came to me for end kennel. And I rewrote those patterns, and I had my structure, and I did all the things that I needed to do to get this dog balanced, to overcome, and to get this dog to be able to succeed. Now keep in mind, this dog was human aggression. If he bites somebody, that dog's probably going to get put down. A lot of times, it happens all the time with me, that I am the last resort for that animal. And that being the case, the next step for that animal is to be put into the system and get put down. Because that dog is showing such a strong propensity to bite, to have aggression tendencies, etc., etc., the last result is when they get put into the system in an animal regulations and to go to the pound or a rescue, whatever it may be, that dog is going to face a good chance of getting put down, right? Without the owner's help, without the owner's tenacity to learn and grow with their animal with the help that I'm going to give them, that dog's going to end up probably being put down, right? And it's nobody's fault except the human factor, right? And I don't want to put that guilt complex on the dog, because a lot of it's ignorant on the owner, but a lot of it's ignorance. But what makes me so angry nowadays is that we have the internet. Back in my day when I first started training dogs as a kid back in the 70s, we didn't have the internet. There's more knowledge than you could shake a stick at now, okay? There's more things telling people what to do and to have the right answers than have ever been in our history. And here these things still keep happening, and it still keeps happening because human nature is to stay in our silos, in our bubbles. And go back to our politics right now. The whole other side, on the other side, that we know that 90% of our society knows is so wrong, is still there because of all the ignorance and the silo, the bubbles that we stay in. They go home every day and they listen to Fox, and that's all they listen to, and they're being lied to. And everything in our society tells them that this is a fact, and they don't want to listen. They want to stick their head in the sand, and they want to avoid the reality of it because of their human behavior, to come home and stay in their same little silos, because that's a lot more comfortable. Facing the truth is no comfort, right? So they don't get off their rear ends. They don't put the work in they need to when that dog's a puppy. And they have major problems. And then they come in with the keys and they say, can you fix it? The dog's now 16, 18 months old. He's 120 pounds. He's all that and then some. He's grown into himself hormonally. And I'm talking a lot of times it's the Connie Corsos and the Presas and those type of breeds. And now you're asking me to make the dog a stable animal? Can I do it? Yeah. But if you don't get off the couch and help me and put the work into it, it's not going to happen. And this is how we make our money. Don't get me wrong. It is what it is. So it is what it is by virtue of the fact that we can do it if we have the knowledge and the expertise, and I've been doing this so many years that I can do that. But at the same time, when that owner gets back into the picture, the dog's going to fade right back to all those pathways that have been written in the dog's brain, right? So it is a problem. And it's a problem based on the human factor, okay? It's because dog training is a lot of about knowledge and expertise and timing and everything I bring to the table with my ability to do what I do. But if the owner is not willing to get off the couch and put the work in to help me keep those pathways pointing towards the direction and the foundation of no, good, yes, and communication baseboard that I've already got set up with that animal, you're facing failure. And then is it fair to the animal to put him through all that pressure and do all this? And then the owner just goes right back to their same lifestyles, and they don't put the work and get off the couch, and they don't have the aggressive attitude of that they understand that they have to drive through and really put the work into. We call it drive-through, guys. It's not going to be that easy in the beginning. The more you keep diligent and you really persevere and you stay on these, the dog is going to end up going, okay, well, I guess, and then all the platform and those pathways that I've written into the brain are now there to be able to be used. But if you go home and you just go right back to your same old lifestyle and you think what I call robot syndrome, that the dog is a robot and that you can get away with just letting that dog go back to those same old behaviors and that it's like I said, like a robot? No. The dog is not a robot. He's an emotional creature. He's just like me or you. How many times have you seen people that go to a psychologist for whatever reason? Let's talk about fear. Let's say you get into a situation where you almost go down the plane and you get the P-wad scared out of you because the plane is going to crash and it levels off and you end up coming back to the airport and you're alive. But that fear puts the fear of God in your heart. And now you don't want to jump on a plane ever again, right? I'll give you a good example of that. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a football coach. And he was a football, dang it, I wish I remembered his name, but you guys will know the story. And he got in a wreck in the plane, crashed, and half of the football team died. A lot of them died, and he walked away from it. But from that point, that fear caused him to never be able to go on a plane again. And for years, he went out and was a commentator on football and all that, and was at all the football games, and ended up never going on a plane, would only go on a bus. For years, that was the case, because he couldn't overshadow all that fear that it went in his heart. And that had been written, that burned into his brain, just like taking a brand and branding it into his brain, and he wasn't able to overcome that. And you can't blame him, right? Well, it's the same way when you have a dog going through things that because you didn't do the right things when it was young, you imprinted and you wrote to the pathways to that dog's mind to a point where now it'll affect that dog for the rest of his life. And now if you're going to say, oh, can you fix it? It's not too late, guys. It can be done. But it's a lot of trauma on the animal, and it's not fair to the animal if you're not going to follow through. So don't expect the trainer to be able to not have your help in this process. It takes you, the owner, along with the trainer, and you learning and growing and understanding what it's going to take to get through and to drive through and to make sure we don't let that dog's behavior slide back to the old pathways that have been written in the brain. And the first thing's going to happen is just what happened with that bulldog. They showed up and that dog flashed on that, and boom. It was like I didn't even do any of the work. I had a Connie Corso about 3 or 4 months ago, 6, 8 months ago, whatever it was, about 16 months of age, 12, 14, whatever it was. And I really had to work hard to overcome all these negative behavior traits. And I did it in the neutral lab at home. I created a lot of behavior loops. I gave me all the tools in my tool bag that I could build into the conditioning of the dog. Went out in public, started working that dog. Same thing. I did all kinds of the right thing. That dog was in a perfect place. I go back to the park. I go to do their go-home meeting, and I'm giving them instructions on what's going on with the dog. The dog was doing very well. We got done with about an hour of the work. And again, it was a go-home meeting. And so the dog was mentally at a spot where it was on the backside of being productive. And all of a sudden, a husky came into the park from across the way across the park. The dog saw that silhouette of that dog, flashed on that, and it was all over with the crying. Ended up going off on me, and I was trying to hold the dog up, dealing with this dog who was going to eat me, all because it got ramped up and reactive with a dog that was all the way across the park. It wasn't even close. Threshold should have been in a pot, but what we had going on was not conducive, and it ramped up, and I slipped and fell on my ass, and the dog was trying to bite me, and it was kind of a dog daddy routine, right? And I ended up having to hand off the leash to the owner and saying, take the dog off of me. And luckily the dog didn't know how to bite. A lot of noise, a lot of times you guys don't realize it's just a lot of noise, a lot of teeth. And sure, I had blood all over my arms, but the dog never been taught to bite. Very lucky. A dog that had been taught to bite would have put me in the hospital, okay? It was all the front of the teeth, and I was getting nicked. And so I had nicks all over my arms, and there was a lot of blood, but it really wasn't that bad in regards to, it's a lot worse if a dog latches on and does what I call a crunch bite. And that's what we teach when we teach a dog to do protection. So I was very lucky in that respect. So I've ran into a lot of these cases over the last year or so, and I'm jaded, guys. I'm just tired of it. It's another reason that I got off line, because I'm just sick of telling and talking about all this stuff, teaching people, and then all they do is go out and start taking in my knowledge and expertise, and they're basically stealing from me, which is fine. It's part of the trade. But if I give out all that information and that makes them feel confident where they think they're a dog trainer, and then poof, I'm a trainer, it's so far from the truth. Because it's a lot about the theory, a lot about the science, a lot about all the stuff you can learn online, but it's also about how many dogs you have under your belt, because that's really what's going to teach you, right? So that's why you see me dropping off online. I'm running silent, running deep. You won't see that many videos, but I really felt this was important, right? You have to realize a dog is not a robot. He's an emotional creature that you need to understand how to use dog psychology and how to recondition the animal and get the dog enough of a baseboard of communication and foundation that you now can give the dog back to the owner, and knowing that they're going to put in the work that it takes to keep driving through, because here's what happens. This is what I've already kind of alluded to in this video already. The dog's going to flash back, and he's going to go right back to those old pathways that have already been written in the dogs. All the triggers are still there. All these emotional places the dog has already went to in the past, the dog is going to be almost like a magnet, be drawn right back to that. And we have to stop that from happening, because we want to make sure that we take advantage of all the pathways that I've written in that month period of time that I've worked real hard to get that dog to the place that he needs to be. This bulldog is a good example. had been almost 2 months for me to get through this dog because he wouldn't let it go. He wouldn't just go, and then let this happen. He was going to fight me the whole way. And so I had to take a lot of work to rewrite those pathways to get ourselves enough of a foundational communication baseboard that we now had that to be able to use. So we made sure that the dog didn't just slide right back to the old pathways. Because again, when he gets back with the owner, that's what's going to happen. Because all that emotions. So you have to understand that. So right now, the reason I started this whole thing, I'm talking about other past accounts, is I've got another dog that just came in. No human aggression, but the dog has a lot of trauma from handler dependency and handler bound, right? So it's the same thing. The dog is very traumatized by being taken away from his owner, but the owners wanted to do this and give it a good try and really try to overcome this problem because of not wanting to lose the dog. They love their animal. But imagine all the work that I'm going to do, and it's very traumatic. This dog came home to my house, put him in a box, he's slobbering. He was so bad a slobber that he was all wet all over his chest, underneath his chin, started to get his nose started to get pink because he's pushing up against the box and licking and constantly putting out saliva. And it took 3 days for that to subside till finally the dog couldn't do it anymore emotionally, and it finally gave up and let go. And then boom, finally started to sleep through the night, finally started to have no drool or a lot less in the mornings, and now I almost have a dry box. And it's the same thing, 2s and 3s. About 3 days in, we started to see a lot of results, right? So now I have to keep doing the program to a point where we get this animal in the right spot. So it's not easy. It's not easy, guys. The animals go through a lot of trauma, okay? And that's what we want to overcome. We want to overcome that trauma and then get the dog to be happy and have a communication baseboard. And then when the dog goes home, the dog is going to have the tendency to flash right back to that old behavior, and it happens fast. It's almost like getting drawn in by a magnet, it's like being pulled right back to those same, they're still there, guys. Those same pathways are still there. But we now have a foundation of new pathways and new things that we have to work with behavior loops that I condition into the animal that we have to use to overcome the problem overall. But it takes work. We're not done yet when the dog goes home. It takes the human factor to really work hard to change their behavior, to make sure that we don't give the dog any of these old things that it wants to draw back to, and that we can keep driving through until a point we get it rewritten. And we have that all those pathways, emotional triggers and everything are rewritten when the owner comes back into the picture, okay? So very important. So that's why I wanted to put this out, because going through the experiences is the only thing I can do is barf this out to you guys. It makes me feel better, and then try to educate the general public to understand what a trainer is going to do for you if he has the skills and the ability, right? All right, Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training, signing off. I'll talk to you later.